Welcome to Office Hours, where we answer your media, tech, and production-related questions every single day. Alexander Knight from Port Coquitlam, British Columbia, Canada, is our reader today. Alexander, what's up first?
First question is from David Brady in New York City, New York, USA. At work, our marketing team has developed some standard PowerPoint templates. Nothing too crazy, just looks, colors, and fonts. Are there any tools to bring these into Keynote that will preserve fonts and alignment and save them as a theme?
Jason Bass is going to start us off. Jason?
There aren't really tools, but it's easier than you think. If you save them as a PowerPoint template and then import them directly into Keynote, you're probably going to have to play with things here and there, but more or less it should work. The gotcha here are charts. Charts are just not going to translate.
And Alex?
Yeah, so we've done this a lot for a very long time. Until we were told we weren't allowed to do it for certain companies, we would take all their PowerPoints and convert them to Keynote because the playout was better and the kerning is better and the anti-aliasing is better in Keynote than it is in PowerPoint. And so what we did, there's really no easy way to do this perfectly. So because, again, there's lots of little idiosyncrasies. But one of the things that we do is, of course, make sure that you know where all the images are that you're using, keep them separately, make sure that you have the fonts that you need, and make sure that they're already loaded before you bring it in. Otherwise, it's a lot of back and forth, and sometimes you can get into kind of a weird cycle there. So you get those things loaded in, you make sure that they're ready to go. Now, go into PowerPoint and export every slide that you have as a PDF. So you want to say, or JPEG or PDF or whatever, but you want a rasterized 2D version of what each PowerPoint slide looks like. Then what you're going to do is bring that into Keynote. You're going to import. You can just open up your PowerPoint in Keynote. It's going to do a bunch of things. Things aren't going to be quite right, but you're going to use those images that you had as underlays, and you're going to reassign. You're going to move everything and nudge everything back to where it belongs. And then you'll end up, and then you save that out as a template. You can save those out in the master slide as a set those master slides up, save that out as a template from Keynote, and now you'll have a demo there. But that's the only way that we found that we could really nail it was to do an image of each one of them, and sometimes example images of each one with some bullet points or some whatever they had there, so we knew how it was going to flow. And generally, the only comment we got was that they couldn't understand why the Keynote slide decks look better than the PowerPoint slide decks when they're identical. And again, it's because you'll notice the things that don't line up perfectly are kerning, anti-aliasing, it's a weird little nudge between the two. And I think PowerPoint's reduced that delta a lot over the last couple of years, so it may not be as noticeable. But the biggest thing people noticed was the Keynote one just looked cleaner, and they couldn't figure out exactly why. They look identical, but one looks better, and that was why.
Next question.
Harold Williams in Portsmouth is asking, the church I belong to used to generate substantial revenue from DVD sales. However, our income decreased significantly when we transitioned to digital. Many people were put off by the paywall on our website. How can we restore media's fundraising?
Jesse Kester will start us off this morning.
I feel like we're kind of putting the cart before the horse in this question. Trying to figure out how to raise money through the sale of media is a very, very dead question. It's like, how do we add pictures to radio or something 100 years ago? What you should be doing, what you should be thinking about is how much can we give to our community to build the largest and strongest community that we can, and then how do we invite our community to invest in this structure, in this infrastructure that we're building for them. So what I mean by that is you put it all out there online for free. Maybe there were members of the church who were surprised by the fact that people didn't like sermons behind a paywall. They should not have been. They need to get over that hump immediately, because that's a great way to asphyxiate your church, is by putting all of your sermons behind a paywall. Give them to the community. Build that community online as efficiently and as strongly as you can. And then, just as with a regular sermon, when you invite the community to invest in that infrastructure that you've created for them, they will give back. But yeah, that surprise on the paywall that's an unforced, internally generated error that you need to correct immediately.
Liberty White.
I echo everything that Jesse said. Unfortunately, sometimes when it comes to houses of worship, church, people think that there are things that they, even though they paid for it before, that, oh wait, it's digital, it's less than. People pay for value, things that are valuable to them. So, like Jesse was outlining, how we're building the community. If there are ways that you can think about programming that then could show more value outside of what the ministry is currently doing, whether that be, and don't take these specific ideas, but just the thought process in it. If there's like behind the scenes, if there's a workbook that takes place with it as well. One of the ministries I went to when I was younger, that they would have for evangelism, all of that stuff would be free, but you would have to pay for the workbook. So if you find a way for things that are tangible, unless you are really telling a captivated story around why they should pay for something, when people can see, feel, touch, those are the things. That's why the DVDs were easy. That was a no-brainer. It's something they could touch. Digital, there still seems to be some kind of disconnect. So if you can kind of think through some of those elements, and maybe even some of the storytelling as well, is that you share as you're finding that product, because digital products still can work, but it's how it's presented to them and giving enough ramp up time and storytelling behind it.
And in the chat, David Brady emphasized what's being said here. Think of creative premiums for donations made. Next question.
This one is from the QR code. Jeff Flukiger in Elkhorn, Wisconsin is asking, is it possible to use AI to place a logo on the shirt of someone in a stock photo? Which tools would you use? What prompts would accomplish this?
Jason Beish, start us off.
Yeah, it's doable. It really is going to depend on the quality of the lighting in your subject and, of course, how clean your logo is. Assuming you've got a clean logo, I've done this with Photoshop with blending to great success. I guess that's not technically AI. Canva with Magic Edit or Smart Mockups also work really well.
Alex?
Yeah, I wouldn't ask it to put it on the shirt. So because you're asking it now to think about a couple different things all at one time. You can get plenty of stock shirts that you want to use and have it generate I guess the question is whether the logo AI is placing the logo or whether it is trying to create the logo. I would create the logo maybe with AI. I find Leonardo is probably one of the better logo-based ones. But you can build the AI logo there and then use, as Jason said, Photoshop or any compositing tool to move it over. There's lots of stock photography. The question is whether you want it on a person. That might be a little bit more complicated if they're wearing the shirt. To kind of blend it in there. You might be able to do this with something like ChatGPT. The new model tends to have really good coherence between what you hand it. Like if you give it a logo and you give it a person with a T-shirt and say put the logo on the upper right or whatever, it may put it on very nicely. I haven't tried that yet. But it won't work in many of them because it'll want to redesign the whole thing as it's going from one to the other. So those are the things you want to look at. But look for things that might have some coherency. And ChatGPT 4. The new image model, 40 image model might be the thing to look at.
I also think you may, and I'm emphasizing the word may, be in violation of your terms with the stock photography group. They may not want you to take a stock photo, put a branding element into the photo, and that they may feel like that's violating their intellectual property rights because they're going to be reselling that photo to thousands of other organizations and don't want to connect it with one brand.
Well, but I think he is stock, but it's on a stock photo that he bought.
Putting a logo like a big Coke logo on the shirt of someone in a stock photo and then presenting that as the image. And I'm saying that the Shutterstock or whomever he bought the photo from may not want a branded.
I don't think that stock. I could be wrong. If you sell the photo, that's a problem. But if you're using it to sell the shirt, I think using it as an image, I don't think that's going to get out of TOS.
Well,
it sounds. Yeah,
Go
it
ahead,
sounds
Liberty.
like, sorry, just jumping in there, it sounds like just what Alex said, that it might be product placement. So let us know, Jeff, if that's the idea that you just want to know, can I use a prompt to put the logo on some kind of T-shirt product? I'm not I don't have the answer to the prompt, but I do know Canva has a bunch of, like, that's what a lot of people will use Canva for. They have different t-shirts and models, and that you can put your logo and then through AI, yes, not a specific prompt, but through AI, do some automations to be able to put the logos on certain products. So that's a partial answer to your question.
And it may or may not be a problem. So just be wary. Next question.
Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. How do you rate the world's smallest global shutter broadcast camera? And it looks like this is a NAB release.
Courtney Gooden's going to help us out here. Courtney?
Well, I took a look at it. It's from this company called Dream Chip. I think it's called the Atom 2. It is pretty tiny. It's 29 millimeters by 29 millimeters by 35 millimeters. And it's just a little, basically it's a camera head with an integrated lens that has a 90-degree field of view in it, I believe, 4.5 millimeter integrated lens. So it's for specialty uses, for like a POV camera, a chest-mounted camera, or body cameras, or POV cameras mounted on the helmet of someone doing a sport, let's say. So the fact that it has a global shutter versus a rolling shutter, which most of the smaller, action cameras have, this allows it to be mixed with broadcast cameras easier and not be able to match the the image quality, perhaps depending upon the lens, of a broadcast camera, at least in color balance and global capture. What the interface is, it doesn't say in this article, so it does seem to have a BNC output on the back of it. Maybe it outputs an SDI signal, I'm not sure, or an uncompressed digital signal of some sort.
Alex Lindsay.
It'll be interesting to see how big I don't think I could find how big the actual sensor was. I mean, the camera is very small. So it depends on, I think Courtney's right that for specialty things where you got to put it in some very, very small item, it does look like it has an probably, I'm guessing, a mini SDI out the back. So you should be able to kind of put it in there. I think that's maybe why they call it a broadcast camera. But it's just hard to know whether it's going to produce much quality. But as a lipstick camera that you put somewhere and hide in a place that you wouldn't be able to get to otherwise, it looks pretty interesting.
Jason Beish.
This looks like every camera I've ever used to basically mount atop a microscope for like cellular photography. I'm not sure what else it could be used for other than that. The 90-degree field of view feels like, in the frame, it's going to get a whole lot of black if you use it for that. But I don't know.
I was just looking in the chat. Ike Potter said sensor size 1/1,8 inches. So 1 1/8 or 1. It's hard for me to decode that, but anyway, pretty small sensor, I guess. Hey, don't forget, we're always taking your questions. You can ask questions, chat about questions, and vote. And if you want to do that in our Mukana system, that's kind of the most full-featured way. If you go to officehours.global/join, we'll send you an email within a day or two. Once you've done that, you kind of get into the community, and at that point, you can not only ask your questions, you can also vote on them, which gives you a little more power because we do run the show based on which questions get the most votes from the most people. So just understand that's there. officehours.global/join. All right, let's go to our next question.
From the QR code, Dewey Evans in Austin is asking, does anyone have experience using an Atomos Sumo 19 as part of a live production? I've purchased one for my mobile podcast setup, but not sure where it might fit in my other setups.
Jesse Kester.
Yeah, we've got some experience with the Sumo, and you're asking about where it fits in other aspects of production. It fits almost anywhere in production. It's a very versatile device with a lot of input, a lot of different ways to use it. The problem is it doesn't fit well anywhere. This was our experience with the Sumo, is clocking in at 12 pounds. It doesn't really work well as a quick grab it and go monitor. We've got plenty of other monitors that are, a pound or less that give us 1920 by 1080. As a recorder, same thing. We can record on our atems. We can record on all kinds of different devices that clock in way under 12 pounds. So it only really works if you need a 1920 by 1080 monitor that has SDI in and recording abilities. But if you only need one of those things and not everything at the same time, the weight and the lift of that thing is not really worth it clocked against its features.
Alex?
It's great. It's a great monitor. We've had them on sets before, and they work well. I guess my impression has been mostly like, wow, that's a great monitor. Works well. And in some cases, heavier makes sense. If you're the client, you're your own client, then you look for weight being low. If you have clients that are going to walk up to the monitor, having something that's really beefy, lets them feel the production cost. So you kind of think about through those things. It is a sizable and beefy kind of monitor that you have there. I'm kind of interested in the 4-up, being able to edit between the 4-up. We've not been that successful with Apollo does that as well. The Apollo does that as well, and we found that to be a little bit buggy. But it is an interesting thing where you could have you could easily cut a very simple show together without a lot of complexity and have it just built into the monitor. So that's kind of an interesting puzzle there. It's got a lot of, kind of HDR to 709. It manages LUTs. It, can record, I think 6K up to, I believe, 30. So I think that it's a pretty solid solution for what it is. So.
I'm going to agree with that 100%. I've had that monitor on set maybe 6 or 7 times in the last 4 years, and it is a beautiful monitor. It seems to be the one that all the clients gravitate to because it just has that kind of sparkle to it. It does tolerate HDR and a bunch of things. It is heavy. The onboard carts that go in for recording, it uses those Blackmagic carts, and you have to have a number of those around with it, so there's a little extra media cost if you want to do a lot of recording on set. But in terms of an actual confidence monitor, I think it's one of the best that I've ever worked with, so I'm pretty positive there. But Jesse is right. They are not light, and you need a cart or some other rolling process that you can move it around a set, because it's not something you want to just toss over your shoulder and lug to the next location. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia. I need a mic for my wife's MacBook Air, low budget, no interface, USB-C, please.
Alexander Knight's going to start you off. Alexander?
Well, Tony, you said low budget, but you didn't mention an actual number. So my first suggestion is going to be the Shure MV6. So this is a less expensive version of the other MV7 hybrid mic that Shure makes. And it sounds really, really similar. I'm not sure if it has the exact same capsule, but it sounds really good for the money. And since you're in the U.S., you can find it on Sweetwater now for $150, and it even comes with a little tabletop mic stand. So I haven't really found a better sounding, dynamic, USB-only mic at that price range that comes with a little mic stand. It's pretty good.
Harshit Trivedi.
Okay, I got about a few suggestions here. So Samsung Q9U would be roughly $100. You could go for a Rode microphone, which they I think nowadays have a Rode with a USB and XLR. So if you need room for expansion, so does a Q9U. SE Electronics has the Neom, which is also a USB mic and pretty reasonably cost, and capsule sounds great for what it's worth. And as far as the Shores, it just depends exactly where you're going to place it. There are some good condenser mics as well with the USB-C output, but I would really just lean into the dynamics so you have that rejection.
And Alex.
Yeah, I would say Shure MV6 is the one that I would choose if you're doing one. The one thing to remember is that these little converters will turn any mic into, this is a Shure this is an M2U, I think. This is the new M2U. And this is just USB and headphone on one side, XLR on the other. It'll turn any mic into a USB interface. So that's another thing to look at. But MVX2U is what the old one was the M2U, I think. So MVX2U is this little guy here. Now it's going to add some cost to it because you buy the mic and then buy this. But just know that you can always make that adjustment there. But the MV6 we're buying more and more of those for people who aren't super technical, and we just want it to work.
And don't forget, tonight on our show offerings is Extra Hours Monday. For those of you around the world for whom the main show timing doesn't quite fit in, that is 6 p.m. Pacific. We also have other shows coming up. Tuesday shows, look for those. On Thursday, we do the rundown with David Paskin. So we're increasing our offers for you to learn and listen to and get the office hours experience. So just pay attention, take note of some of those. Next question.
Kyle Nesta in Philadelphia. How can I make my show timer visible to remote presenters? I'm using Ontime, getontime.no. The show timer feed currently goes to the host on site. Now offer other remote presenters want access too.
Courtney, is there a simple way?
Well, you're using Ontime. You should look at the use cases for this because it's browser based. And it does offer, this is the free version, but it does offer a $20 a month version where it allows multiple people to access it. So if they have a small computer, a laptop, or a tablet PC, they should be able to access it with your running Showtime. So I'm not sure, and it's cross-platform, so it'll run on just about anything, a tablet PC, or it doesn't say iOS, but it does support Mac OS, both the ARM version and the Intel versions, and Windows. So I would see, since it's browser-based, you should be able to access it from a separate PC from different people, unless I'm missing something here. And it's $20 a month, I think, for they have different levels of use. A free one to download in private use for a small number of people, and then as you go up in the number of people to access it, the price goes up to a monthly fee.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah. Now, Mickey says to generate a presenter link and send it to your remote presenters. I'm just wondering whether that's you have to have the browser version to do that. So I don't. I'm not 100% sure. And David Brady said pop it open in a browser, feed that meeting in as a camera, or capture it or USB. And so there's a couple different ways for you to make that available. So I think that if you can't just send them a browser link, if it's because you have the local version, you can, there's a whole variety of ways of, anything that's going to be able to deliver a window to Zoom or whatever you're using for your presentation. We do this all the time. I've got a little audio meter over here in Zoom, or over here I have an announcement pane that right now is blank, which is good. It means nothing's needed to be handled, but we could easily put a clock in there as much as we want. And we just keep on adding services. And what's nice about that, I will say that figuring out a way to just push it back into Zoom as an input means that nobody has to think about where they're going or what they're doing. You're adding more services to Zoom itself rather than something else. You just got a window with things in it. So if that's what you're trying to do, we try to put as much as we can into extra Zoom windows before we give people new URLs, because what happens is they start shuffling around trying to figure it out. And most of the stuff, like timers, are things that can they do well in a small window. So you don't want to have to open up a whole nother browser and start managing something else as a user when you could just have a little window that put it in there.
Kyle, hope that helped you out. Next question.
Another QR code question from Hiroshima in Kigali, Rwanda. What are the biggest changes you have seen in live production over the last few years, and how do you think it will evolve in the next few years?
Oh, boy. A little prognostication time. Courtney Gooden's going to start us off.
Well, I think the biggest advance I've seen, especially in live productions like musical events and stage plays and those type of live events, is the move from just a video wall for iMag to replacing all the scenery with graphics, 3D graphics in a stage play, for example. That they don't build sets a lot of times anymore. They just use a huge video wall with a low, a fine pitch LED wall behind them. And even on the sides, the wing walls come out, and they can, on those 3 or 4, sometimes they actually include the floor of video wall on the floor, so that they can put in a textured floor or a wooden floor or whatever kind of floor treatment they want. And then the only thing they have to deal with are hand props and a few set pieces like chairs, sofas, things that people need to interact with. And the rest of the design can be made to look almost completely real in the background without having to build sets and fly them up to the flies of a theater and fly it down and do a blackout or a stage change, to change the set to another scene. It's almost instantaneously. They can slide some different set pieces onto the stage and very quickly change a scene without having to fly a bunch of scenery in and out. That's the biggest change I've seen in productions like that. And of course, music, a lot of great animated backgrounds for musical numbers that are tightly integrated with the music that's playing, so that they're running off of a SMPTE timecode track that not only powers some flying in some additional tracks that they may need if they don't have the musicians live on the stage that are playing those tracks that, that played, if they had the London Symphony Orchestra playing on the record and they want their live act to sound like the record, but they don't want to pay the London Symphony Orchestra to travel around with them. They can fly a track in, and then they can also fly in synchronized background video images to make a show much more attractive.
Harshit Trivedi.
Yeah, so I agree with Courtney there with a lot of changes with having LED screens. Like The Mandalorian was one of the first TV shows that really utilized that. And we had a guest actually that made that screen. But the other piece I want to say is like how Skype has gone, basically deprecated. Using Zoom as a client and all the tools that are surrounding Zoom, I see a lot of envelopes pushed. I see a lot of artists like Timbaland utilizing Zoom to, maybe make music production work remotely. So even for that live perspective of doing a show and streaming, I really think that the software based that we all have now and how we keep pushing the envelope has really changed the trajectory of production.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, I agree with everything said before. The LED walls getting to a pitch that actually worked. So a lot of LED walls for 5 years ago, it was just super expensive to get a 0.9 or 1.5 mil screen, and now they're not inexpensive, but much more affordable, and that's made it something that everyone's using everywhere, and people have gotten better of understanding how not to have moire and those types of things that we had issues with. I think that one of the things we're seeing is people realize that live is a huge opportunity for engaging a lot of audiences, and so we see it being used more and more heavily on TikTok, on YouTube, on other things where you see lots and lots of as a TikTok, you see it's like every third or fourth pane is a live feed. And one thing that's interesting that's happening in TikTok right now is people are starting to DJ on TikTok, because TikTok doesn't, I'm just seeing more and more DJ feeds where people are just playing music on TikTok, and there's a picture of them, there's a video of them with their mixer, you're kind of like, it's a little boring to watch, but okay. But that's becoming a bigger market there. As far as what's going forward, I think that one of the things that we're going to see is more and more of this, more streaming by individual creators, but also the pipelines are starting to change. We are seeing more and more interest in 2110. I'm about to put a 2110 system into a location with a lot of the Blackmagic stuff, so that and just being able to manage all of that with Ethernet. I know people who use NDI are like, I've been able to do this for a long time, but this is really a little bit more structured, and so we're going to be adding a bunch of 2110 cameras, and I will admit that I was waiting for 2110 to show up, and now that you're just starting to plug in Ethernet, it's really nice. And so I think that, of course, what's ushering a lot of that in is Blackmagic making it actually affordable. I think a lot of times 2110 was something that was expensive and cumbersome and everything else, and like many other things, Blackmagic is coming in and doing something that's reasonably stable at a reasonable price. And it makes it possible. Again, I'm not using it for my main productions yet. This is just a smaller thing, but we're starting to ramp that up. And so I think you're going to see a lot of that. I think that 5 years from now, no one's going to be running SDI. It's all going to be some version of IP.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, a couple of other things I thought of when we're talking about it is actually changes in lighting. When I first started in the business, I worked as a stagehand, a union stagehand, on a lot of, big touring rock and roll shows. And the lighting was always a nightmare because you had all these Lico cans and you had to have different colored gels in each one so that they could change the color of the gels. They'd have to have a different light for each color. And it made it very complex to do, scene changes, color changes, lighting changes. Nowadays, with robotic heads and LED, RGBW LEDs that can change to any color in the spectrum instantaneously and crossfade between colors and flash different colors, Lighting has changed completely. It requires a lot less manpower, a lot less stuff that has to go on that truck and go between venues. And with the digitally controlled, DMX-controlled lighting systems, you really cut down on your manpower in setup time and strike time, as well as doing the show. Also, robotic cameras. I'm seeing a lot more of those in award shows and things where they have to have a camera down in front of the audience. It kind of gets in the way. It'll pop up on a stalk and travel around a curved track to get different, very close-up scenes of people on stage without being too obtrusive and not having to put a camera operator blocking your view in front of you. And they may start to use these more on 3-camera sitcoms and live shows like that, replacing the camera operators perhaps with remote camera operator, replacing the on-the-floor camera operators with remote camera operators and robotic control cameras, so that they cause less of an interference with the audience's view that is in the studio.
Alex Lindsay.
And I guess I'd say the other is just the sheer power of inexpensive tools is just kind of mind-numbing. You know, I'm doing a shoot next week that we've got a Steadicam, traditional Steadicam, most because the client asked for it. We have a Ronin 40 for the secondary location because we thought that would be a more efficient way to do a simpler walkthrough. And then we have an RTK drone that'll basically, the cool thing about an RTK drone is that it basically is like a rail in the sky. You just say, this is where I want it to go, and this is the speed I want it to go, and you set the keyframes, and it just does the thing it needs to do every single time exactly the same way. It's so inexpensive to do all these things now in a thing that would have been, I just look back 5 years ago or maybe a little bit more, it would have been a helicopter and it would have been 2 big Steadicams and it would have been, a lot of other things. And these tools are just getting just insanely inexpensive. The Ronin 40 is transformational. Like I just look at the footage and I'm excited. This is the first show I've actually used it on a paying gig, but we've played with it a little bit. And then if you look at adolescents, I mean, you got to look at the adolescents behind the scenes stuff. It's going to change a lot of how shows get built. They're shooting whole shows with a single camera, a single camera take, and they're using this what we tend to refer to as the chicken head, which is the Ronin 40, and they're literally handing it from one camera operator to another, attaching it to drones while the person's walking so that they can fly it over. It's insane, and this is a product that's less than $10,000. It is. So I think that the ability for average people or people who are starting to make money doing social media to do incredible work puts an incredible amount of pressure on the streamers and everything else because, these tools are so available. And you have a lot of people with creativity that are learning how to use them really fast. The final thing I'll say is that AI is, of course, going to be a big deal. People are able to people are able to do kind of incredible things. And I know that people are like, oh, well, they're just copying other things. Maybe, but they're also going to come up with a lot of new things that are new and different and interesting and entertaining.
Let's go to our next question.
Jan Smith in Trinidad, West Indies, launched minutes ago new overlays.uno released. Fresh features like color palettes, display variants, enhanced controls, and more. Explore the library and experience the new and improved phase, and there's a link there.
Alex.
Yeah, so Uno is they're a HTML5 based system, much like the SPX that we use here for the show. And so it just has a lot of, you can kind of build what you want here and then run it as an HTML5 overlay anywhere you want. It's got, it has, Stream Deck integration and other things like that. So it's kind of a cool setup. We're going to be testing more HTML5, probably with SPX, but with probably a lot of other things. We just got some encoders that will do, these Videon encoders that will do 1080p 60 with HTML5 in the encoder so that we can put up questions and everything else without anything else there. So that's what they do. They've got a new collection.
Liberty White.
So I'm in the chat with Rayon because I was looking. I'm unfamiliar with their overlays, but some of the things that jumped out to me was the fact that you could instantly, like they have the design variants. So that is super important for when you are going, whether you're repurposing your content, that you can go from landscape to portrait. So that caught my eye, but also that for their ads, they have an ad supported tier that if you don't pay for the premium to be able, I guess, to not get watermarks on it as well, is that you can see ads in it. And that's just interesting to me. I don't know that I've seen a product type like this of graphics where they're going to include ads so that you can get access. So it's Monday. So just the business side, I thought that was kind of interesting.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, and we're trying to use polls more often in Mukana. So we asked folks, like, are you using HTML5 graphics? And the vast majority are. So so we got most of the votes were for about by 3x were yes. So this is definitely a market. Only 2 people said, "What is that?" so there you go.
Next question.
Josh Lynch in Burbank. Does anyone have a trick or hack to open multiple atem control software panels on a single machine at the same time? I'm leaning towards building a companion controller or maybe run some virtual machines, but wanted to see if the panel has any ideas.
Jason Bass might be able to help you out. Jason?
Yeah, there are a couple of ways to do this on Windows, but a lot of them are weird. On Mac OS, the most traditional way to do this is you actually just duplicate the atem app in your apps folder. You can do it with a bash terminal, so open space -n space -a, and then in quotes atem control or atem software control will also do it.
Hey, I'm sorry, Jesse wanted to get in on that. Jesse?
Jason, if you've tried this, what's the reliability like? Is this something that you'd be better off just buying another machine like a Mac Mini or something, or is it actually production ready to do it that way?
I wouldn't do this in production, but I've never really had to. I have too many machines for it to be an issue.
By the way, if you have questions you want to put into the show queue, you can also type in askofficehours.global. You can just type that into any web browser. That's askofficehours.global. If you would like, you can also use the QR code that I'm throwing up on the corner of the screen right now. If you're watching the show in video and want to just grab that screen, that QR code will take you to the same place. That's askofficehours.global. That's the quickest way to get a question into the show at any time. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Noonan, Georgia is asking, House of Worship did an in-person service in the home of a member, only had an iPhone on a tripod and an M1 MacBook Pro. What is a camera and audio setup that could have improved the experience for those in Zoom watching?
Jesse Kester.
So I'm going to help you out with audio, but there's a rule at the end, and if you don't follow this rule, you aren't allowed to take my advice. This is the DJI Mic 2. It's a clever little device that has 2 wireless lavalier mics and a receiver in it. The nice thing about the receiver is it comes with this little doohickey that plugs right into your iPhone. Oop, pardon me. They also have the USB-C version, so depending on what you're trying to get this thing plugged into, you can get it into an older iPhone or a newer one. It is 2.4 gigahertz, so there's like a line of caution that we tend to take with that frequency. But if you're using it inside somebody's personal residence, you'll probably be fine. The rule is you are not allowed to have your pastor with the DJI logo facing towards the camera. You got to hide that in their clothing somewhere, or get a lavalier that you plug into the transmitter so that logo is not exposed. And if you follow that rule, you'll be good to go with this.
Alex Lindsay.
Yeah, in a relatively small and non-congested environment, you will find that the little DJIs work pretty well. So I have a pair, and we've used them for those types of things pretty often. And the main thing is you just want to make sure there's a line of sight, and I think you'll have this, between the camera rig that has the receiver and the DJI that is transmitting, because they don't handle going through large bags of water, which are people, very well. So you just don't want to have that receiver somewhere between a lot of people and the two of them there. But if you keep line of sight in a relatively uncongested environment, they should work fine.
Next question.
This is a question from me. The Junos, a prestigious awards event for Canadian musicians, was streaming at 720p. How is this acceptable in 2025? And any guesses as to why they decided on this? 720p live streaming was a thing a decade ago on YouTube.
Courtney Gooden, what's your thought?
Well, if they have a large audience, paying for bandwidth, comes into account, and it costs a lot less to stream 720p. And for example, here in Los Angeles, it's a fairly large service area for television stations. And the local KABC television station, the ABC affiliate owned by Disney, who happens to be located in Glendale, transmits at 720p. And they have for years on the broadcast channel. The other channels, even the independents, are 1080p, but ABC's broadcasting at 720p. Some people just don't want to spend the money.
Alex Lindsay.
It could be the infrastructure, like just the infrastructure, not the streaming itself, which I think has gotten to be a relatively inexpensive thing to do. But the infrastructure of their entire pipeline may be limited to 720, and they haven't upgraded, which is kind of insane. So I will say that at this day and age, I mean, even the broadcast organizations, the local TV affiliates that still do 720p, you're like, come on, man. Come on, like really? And the problem is that it wasn't noticeable with YouTube TV now, especially if you have the 4K version of it. You can really see the difference because it's much cleaner than everything else that YouTube TV when it started. I was like, oh, I don't know if this is going to work. And now it's so much cleaner and clearer than regular broadcast, and you're getting these feeds. You immediately see 720, and you're just like, oh, that's so sad. And CBS, I think, caps it at 720. A lot of the other reason they do it is to protect the IP. So they record it at 1080, they run it at 1080, but they don't want they don't want people to have it at 1080p, because it's their I've had a conversation with folks that have said that is they don't want to give the full resolution away, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do with it? It's a live show, like who cares, but they seem to think it's important. It's a lot of old thinking that's bleeding. The past is bleeding into the future.
I'm staying at 640 by 480, and that's it. Alexander Knight, your thought?
Come on, Canada. If this Canadian over here can live stream in 4K from his apartment, come on. We got to be able to do better here. That's all I'm saying.
Let's go to the next question.
Zach Stahlsmith in Chautauqua, New York. I have multiple video clips in Final Cut that were recorded on different cameras with different mics. How can I make the audio levels uniform throughout the whole video?
Alex is going to start with some help.
Yeah, I think Bill might have some better ideas for how to do it specifically in Final Cut. But of course, the thing you're looking for is the first thing that I approach it, and this doesn't really matter whether it's Final Cut or other things. And Bill might have better tools in Final Cut to do it with. But the first thing, of course, is you want to match all the volumes. So you want to get the volume, matched through the entire system. And then the next thing is EQ. So you're going to start listening for that EQ and pulling it together. Of course, the other thing that may be happening is noise reduction. Some things are going to be noisier than others, so get rid of that. Get rid of that noise before you do too much work to make sure that you're not moving that around too much. I will say one lesson that we have from the weekend. I was shooting for my my kids' high school. I brought some 12Ks over, as you do, because we had them. And so my son and I, the kids, you should see the amount of attention, you get when you bring 100 to 400 lenses over with 12Ks and put them on either side of the stage. Everybody's game goes up really quickly, And so, but what we did is the house had the house is run by some other students, and they some of the recording didn't work out as well as they wanted it to for the audio, and we just haven't gotten to the point where we're pulling feeds from them yet. So fortunately, we have a mic that picked it up. We just use the mics as sync points, in our on our cameras, and so we don't we're just pulling whatever the mics do, and we don't really manage them that tightly. Fortunately, one was relatively good because it's the only audio that we of the shoot, so for parts of the show, and so and that will never, I was like, well, the lesson for us was that it's now time to take what we will come with our own mic system as a backup, like we'll be capturing in the audience and with proper mics and everything else to make sure that we're pulling it just in case something happens. So anyway, it's just an interesting puzzle.
I agree with everything Alex said. Listen, this is challenging, and here's why. Somebody once told me, that think about recipes for video and audio, particularly like recipes for cooking food. And, let's say you're going to do a dinner and your main course is codfish of some kind. And you have a sauce and you have flavor profiles and you spend a lot of time to get a great recipe. And the first 3 batches of cod that comes through are pretty normal, so everything's working fine. But then somehow some salt cod slips in. And it tastes very different than the other fish you're doing. Well, if you're using the same recipe and you're not adjusting it, you're going to get a very different result because the thing is already salty to begin with. And now if you add salt to that, it's getting too salty. And I always think when people say, I've got a whole bunch of different video coming in, that's my problem. What does the video that's coming in look like? Was it shot under the same lighting conditions? Was it shot on the same camera? Is it consistent or is it radically different? And if it's radically different, my first goal is to try to get everything to be as similar as possible so that when I apply global adjustments on the frames of my video, it isn't affecting one thing in a worse way that it's affecting a different shot. So that is the problem. How do you do this with audio? You've got to figure out what you've got coming in. Is it full bandwidth? Was it recorded well? Is it 24-bit? Or is it some odd little thing at a different cadence? Maybe it was shot at 44 kilohertz, maybe it was shot at 16 kilohertz or something weird. And you've got to fix that and get everything consistent. And once you get everything consistent, then you can apply global changes to it. So I wish there was a simple thing. I mean, there are really rough tools like Levelator is one I used to use on voices a good little bit because it just smashes everything up to full volume. And so I knew that if I was doing a voiceover that had to cut through any mix anywhere, I might slap it into that. I would never use that on something where I wanted nuance. I would never use it on a music performance or never use it on anything where I wanted the whispers to sound like whispers and the shouts to sound like shouts because I knew it was just going to crush everything. So that's what you're facing. Zach, I'm sorry, but the only thing I can think of to suggest to you is just try to figure out all the tools you necessary to get things to one consistent place. Because if you can do that in the beginning, in the first steps of your workflow, then everything becomes easier because when you apply that global adjustment later, whether it's color, audio, editing, whatever, you will be consistent throughout the program and you won't be that if all the original fish is totally different. My 2 cents. Let's go to the next question.
Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. Any thoughts on low-power TV stations going to an all-data business model? And there's a link there.
Courtney Gooden.
Yeah, I tried to read through most of this information. Low-power TV is kind of a local access TV. It used to be like cable access where you could have free access to cable TV viewers at the cable TV station. And low power TV is a similar type of thing, only it broadcasts in 6 megahertz. They used to transmit in the old analog signals, standard def analog in 6 megahertz band. It had a very small footprint and it was covered by a different section of of FCC rules. So that, it didn't require a very expensive license and you didn't have to manage all the regulations that the FCC puts on standard broadcast stations. And so they're talking about moving this to 5G, which as more and more 5G cellular towers become ubiquitous, there's a separate section of the broadcast that was designed, of 5G, that was designed for portable broadcast. In other words, broadcasting a television signal for mobile devices. So far, that's been approved internationally because 5G is an international broadcast standard for mobile devices. However, the FCC has not authorized its use in the United States anywhere for commercial use. So until the FCC can authorize that and do testing, and I'd say it's several years away before they can offer what it was the equivalent of low power TV on 5G. To serve small rural areas or small urban areas even with localized broadcasting. You're not going to see it for quite a while.
Alex Lindsay.
we're desperate to find some reason people should be using 5G, and they're going to keep on. How can we use 5G? Like, who cares? It still feels slower than the LTE that I had before. Like, I don't, like, maybe I'm just in the wrong place, but I have literally seen no benefit to this giant boondoggle that is 5G.
Next question.
Talalik Lopez Waterman in Providence is asking, I learned of a new service that will be a big game changer for me. Is this only useful for stage lighting applications, or could it help more with video-centric work as well?
It looks like gettvor.app. Alex, have you looked at it?
This is definitely one of those things that's it's pretty geeky. What it does is it actually overlays all of this data on top of, so your time code, lighting cues, automation data is all, it can read anything that is available via OSC and make it available as an overlay for you to see what's coming up and how it's working. It ties directly into Grand MAs and ETCs and all the controls that you have there. I don't know yet. It's minutes old in my head, but the idea that we could easily grab all that data and have it composited over top of it so that we can see what's going on. Craig Kadoki said I showed that last year on OH. Sorry, Craig, maybe I wasn't there. I don't know how I missed this. He says we use it for all of our operas. So that looks fantastic. It's very geeky. It's for people to have all the inside information. It's kind of like stats for geeks that you see on YouTube, but for all this other information that's going on a stage. It looks really awesome. So we'll definitely take a look at it. I mean, I'd love to get those guys on to talk about it. It's really cool.
Sounds exciting. Hey, if you value what we do here, there are ways you can help. You can like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can volunteer at officehours.global/volunteer, become part of the team that makes all this possible, or you can donate, if you'd like, at officehours.global/donate. Next question.
Jesse Kester in Glendale. Blackmagic's countdown timer is up for their NAB announcements. Any predictions or wish lists? Will there be an Office Hours watch party?
Alex Lindsay, what are the thoughts?
Yes, we should do that. It's 8:00 it's right after the show. So we'll dump right out of the show into something else. And I don't know exactly how we'll do that because it just popped up and the timing happens to be perfect. So we'll figure out how to do a watch party. And by Friday, we'll know how to do it. By Thursday morning, when we talk about it on the show here, we'll know how to do what we're going to do, what version of watch party we're going to do. But I think that, I have a temptation, we'll see, is to do the watch party as part of the show, like a special, I'm going to say the word, special second hour. Because it happens to be right up against us. Yeah, everyone's like, oh no. So anyway, but I think that if we just have the show, we'll have to figure out how to wire it up for the panelists. But if we just have the show transition into it, that way no one has to go anywhere else, we'll figure it out. But what it means is that the panelists have to be able to, we'll have to see how that works. We'll talk on the back end about what the best way to do that over this week, but I think that's the way we'll do it. So stay tuned for that.
Jesse Kester.
And I'm correct in assuming that the timing of that is because Grant Petty didn't want to go toe-to-toe with Office Hours, correct?
Yeah, they called us and said, "Hey, when do you end now? Do you have the second hours anymore?" And I said, "No, we stopped doing the second hours a little bit a while ago." And they said, "Is it okay if we put something on a Friday?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, that's good. Yeah. Sounds good. We'll just rock right into it." And they were like, "Okay, here we go." So I'm sure that was exactly how it went. I'm not being
probably a week of meetings.
Yeah, exactly. Back and forth. Exactly.
Next question. Oh, yeah.
Paul Vahus in Austin, Texas. In what ways does the production of the women's NCAA basketball tournament 2024 to 2025 differ between ABC and ESPN?
And Liberty White has some ideas. Liberty?
Yes, I was waiting for this question because as we end Women's History Month, but also I got a chance to meet the GM and the new president for the Toronto Tempo, Monica Wright Rogers, and then also Teresa Risch. And at that event, they were sharing all of this data on women's sports and the investment that will be in women's sports in this year. And I want to make sure I get the number right. It's $2.35 billion. 1.88 billion UK in euros and then US dollars. So what does that mean for ESPN, ABC, increased coverage? you're seeing, and I was pulling it up as well, on ESPN, what they're calling mega casts presentation. So that is all the behind the scenes, all of the interviews that you will see, much, much more of that on the platform. On ABC, this is also the 30th year of ESPN covering just, again, data there as well. So what we're going to see is much more investment, not only from the monetary side, but the exposure, the media side, the interviews. We'll see it'll get a lot closer to what we see what we've seen in the past, even with March Madness, with men's sports. So just anticipate seeing a lot more storytelling, a lot more statistics, data, because when it comes to women's sports, and at this event, they shared so much data behind what is happening in women's sports, and it is the storytelling, it is also the investment, because when it comes to women's sports, that those who follow it, they say there is much more brand affinity. So we're seeing both of these networks investing in that because it makes good business.
Boy, does it. I'm thinking back all the way to all the controversy over Title IX and making sure that women's athletics and college area and things like that were given some semblance of parity. Not quite parity, really, but it really has, over the course of a couple of generations, certainly changed women's athletics for the better in so many ways. So it's nice to see this happening. Next question.
Roz McNulty in Vancouver, Canada is asking, any clues of why my Photoshop navigation keeps going to the hand or move icon? My spacebar on my Mac Studio M1 seems to be jinxed. Yes, keyboard and mouse checks.
Alex?
Yeah, the only thing I would wonder is if you have any other automation. So by the way, the hand tool is something, as you mentioned, the space bars. You hit the space bar and you get a hand and you can move things around. And so my only question is whether you have any other automation or any other app that could be running on a iPad or iPhone or something else that would simulate that, maybe in a bag somewhere. Because that's the only thing I can think of, because I don't know why you would have it otherwise, that you'd see the hand all the time. I've never seen that behavior. But I feel like you probably have something floating around that still is connected, that's getting tapped or moved.
David Brady said, crumbs under the space bar? Could it be as simple?
It's happened. That is another thing. You can take your space bar off, pop your space bar off, and get one of those little vacuums and go in there and you pull it off. I used to, one of my favorite things to do on phone calls is tear my keyboard apart and clean it. Like, it just gave me something to do while I was listening to people talking on calls.
It's always something weird like that when you can't track it down. Next question.
Tony Mobley in Georgia. Can Liberty share AI event last week's highlight?
Yes, please, Liberty. What's up?
Thanks for this question, Tony. I was here responding to Paul in the chat, and then I heard my name. So last week we had Women in AI Futures, which was an entire week of AI. We had 2 online days, I should say. So we had speakers from across the globe teaching how to develop agents, how to use AI in your career to up-level yourself, upskill yourself. And then the remaining days were on-site activations. It was phenomenal, just all the testimonials from people and we were very intentional, making sure that it was 5 days. That was a lot. People said, it was insane. Alex, next time I'm probably going to give you a call so that we can work out the global online programming. But we were intentional with the 5 days, because just like we do on office hours, we are here every single day, and there's a certain type of learning and stickiness that happens with the repetition of hearing the same terminology, hearing how people are using things, the various use cases. So I hope to have some exciting news in the next month or so, just what has come out of the learning. So thank you for the question, Tony.
And Alex wanted to comment.
How are the tracks set up?
So they were, the first 2 days since it was global, we have a global audience, that was just foundational information. Mm-hmm. So those who are new to AI or just not really understanding how it works. And then the third day was innovators, because it is called Women and AI Future. So this was our C-suite leadership folks and what's happening now, but what's coming next. And then we were very, very intentional with having a skills lab. So they, again, learned how to build agents. We had mentorship. So there was a lot of things happening, but it was also built so at any point in time that we want to break out and only have the Innovator Summit, only have the foundations, like they could also stand alone.
Right. It's cool.
Thank you.
Very nice. Let's sneak one more question in because I like the question.
I own multiple hole saw bits. Any recommendations on how to store them so I don't cut myself when I reach for them? Currently stored loosely in a plastic container. This is my question.
This is the only hole saw question we've ever gotten, so I'm excited for it. Courtney has some help for you.
I guess it depends on the type of hole saw. If it's the kind that's like a wood saw that has the concentric saw blades, 10 of them around a circle, and then a cotter pin you remove and you take out the ones you don't need. Those you can cut your fingers up pretty good. This is a perfect application of a 3D printer with TPU filament in it, which is the flexible type TPU. I can't tell you how many little keepers I've made out of TPU to hold like all the bits for my soldering, the end soldering tips for my soldering iron. There's 20 of them all in one place, and you just take the measurements off of it. You build a cap in 3D, in Tinkercad that'll fit over the top of the hole saw that has a hole in the middle and a rubber-like TPU urethane cap that slides over the top of the blades, and it keeps the blades from cutting you. And that's multiple saw blades. That looked like. So you could make one for each blade, a little cap to cover the teeth, and slip them over them and stick them then concentrically, or that you could make one particular holder that would hold each one concentrically in little circular slots. Very easy to design in Tinkercad with just geometric sizes. Measure the concentric rings correctly and let them go down about the depth of the teeth, and then just stick them in. And that TPU is tough. You can't break it, tear it, or I've tried many times. Anything I want something that lasts a long time, I use TPU. So there's your challenge. Design a TPU holder.
We can answer any question. I will just admit that I ended up with 4 doorknob-sized hole saws at one point in my life, and I don't know how I did it. It made me feel really, totally poorly organized. Anyway, thank you for watching. We truly appreciate your being here today. Thanks so much. To the constituencies that make this possible, our producers first and foremost. Those of you who ask questions, vote on those questions, help us understand what you want to learn about every day when we're doing this. Thank you very much. The panelists who show up every day and volunteer their time. Great panel today. It was fun listening to everybody and learning from them. I hope you felt the same. And to our amazing back-end crew, all the people who are quietly working behind the scenes to make this show possible every single day. We could not do this without your brilliance and technical acumen. You are an impressive group of people, and you stun us every day by how much you do and how well. For the Talk Traversal today, we traveled, if you'd had to go ask people these questions and get it in person, 34,000 miles. That's 55,000 kilometers, 268 million bananas for scale. That takes care of today's show. We'll see you tomorrow. Thanks for watching.
So I got to buy a $1,000 3D printer.
$200 they cost, Alexander.
but the $1,000 ones are great.
$1,000 ones are great.
Alexander, $14. They said 1,000.
So good.
Great job, Bill Alexander.
I didn't know that there's a pretty serious robotics crew at the high school that my kids go to, but I had heard about it, but I hadn't seen it. We were short a couple quarter 20s yesterday, and so I'll just go over to the robotics lab. I think someone's over there, and I went over there. I figured, there'll be a kid tinkering around or whatever. I walk in. There are 20 high school students. There's motors everywhere. There's 2 teachers watching them. This is on a Sunday morning. I was like, holy smokes, what is going on here? They're like, yeah, this is no joke. This is like a full-time job. I'm like, when kids sign up for robotics, it's
they're building the next Death Star.
Yeah, and what they